It's neither the largest nor the most populous state, but this state has America's largest city, which is home to the United Nations headquarters. And this city is considered as the world's financial, cultural, and media capital. You guessed it, in this video, we'll be learning about New York State. New York was one of the original 13 colonies that formed the United States of America. The state of New York is located in the northeastern United States on the eastern coastline, so it has the Atlantic Ocean in the east. The bordering states are Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Vermont, all to the east, New Jersey and Pennsylvania to the south, and New York also shares an international border with the Canadian provinces of Quebec to the north and Ontario to the northwest. The capital of New York State is Albany. However, New York City is actually the largest city in the state, and other major cities include Buffalo, Rochester, Yonkers, and Syracuse. This is the flag of New York State, and this is the state seal. It's pretty easy to see that the flag of New York is literally just the state seal on a blue background. This is the case for almost half of the US states. Now, the official New York State bird is the eastern bluebird. The fruit is the apple, that makes sense, and the flower is the rose. The state tree is the sugar maple, and the slogan is, "I love New York," or you can say, "I heart New York." This was created by Milton Glaser back in the 1970s. And the nickname of the state is the Empire State. The two-letter postal code is NY. New York follows the US Eastern Standard Time. The state of New York is divided into 62 counties. 5 of these counties are coterminous with the boroughs of the city of New York. This means that the boroughs also serve as individual counties with responsibilities for themselves as part of New York State. Now, New York City is located at the southern tip of New York State, where the Hudson River meets the Atlantic Ocean. In order to distinguish the state from New York City, the state is sometimes referred to as New York State. Now, both New York State and New York City were named after the 17th century Duke of York, who would become the future King James II of England. New York City is also the largest city in America, and it's home to the United Nations headquarters. New York City is also an iconic city that's regarded as the world's financial, cultural, and media capital. With 19 million people in 2019, New York State is the 4th most populous state, and 2/3 of its people lives in the New York City metropolitan area, with nearly 40% residing in Long Island. As per the 2019 estimate, 8.3 million people live in New York City, and around 20 million people overall live in the New York metropolitan area, which is also called as the tri-state area because it's got 3 states in it, making it one of the largest metro areas in the world. And as of 2019, the New York metropolitan area is estimated to produce a gross metropolitan product, or GMP, of $2 trillion. New York is home to the highest number of billionaires out of any city in the world. And there are many more interesting things about New York City itself, which we are actually going to talk about in a separate video because there's so many amazing things about New York City. Now, let's start with the history of New York State, going all the way back to around 10,000 BC, when humans first arrived in the area which we call now as New York. There were two major groups of Native Americans who came here by 1100 AD in this area. They were the Iroquoian and the Algonquian. And then Europeans started arriving in 1524, led by the Italian Giovanni de Verrazzano, and the English explorer Henry Hudson landed in North America on behalf of the Dutch East India Company in 1609 and explored the region around the modern New York metropolitan area. And he decided to claim the land for the Dutch. And in 1624, the Dutch built the Fort Orange. Makes sense because the Netherlands' official color is orange, so Fort Orange, and that later became the city of Albany, the capital of New York State. And a year later, in 1626, New Amsterdam was built, which was took over by the British in 1664 and renamed both the colony and the city after the Duke of York as New York, because York is already a place in England, and they basically went, what if we just tacked a new at the beginning of it? And, well, there's New York. New York City gained prominence in the 18th century as a major trading port in the 13 colonies and played a very pivotal role during the American Revolution and subsequent war. The American colonists managed to get control of this area as they defeated the British in 1777, and New York became the 11th state to join the Union in 1788 as one of the original 13 colonies. New York City was the national capital at various times between 1785 and 1790, and Albany became the permanent state capital in 1797. Significant transportation advancements in the 19th century enhanced the expansion, development, and the economy of New York State. The first steamboat line in 1807, the Erie Canal in 1825, and America's first regularly scaled rail service in 1831. It's incredible. Specifically, the Erie Canal, the second longest canal in the world, was built to create a navigable water route from New York City and the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the Great Lakes, and that changed the course of the history of New York. Now, during the 19th century, New York City became the main entry point for European immigrants, and Ellis Island was opened in 1892 as the Central Immigration Center for the U.S. The Statue of Liberty was gifted by France to the United States and was placed on Liberty Island in 1886, which became a symbol of hope. New York boomed during the Roaring '20s, before the Wall Street crash of 1929. Wall Street is in New York City, and skyscrapers express the energy of the city. New York City was the site of the successive tallest buildings in the world from 1913 up to 1974. The buildup of defense industries for World War II turned around the state's economy from the Great Depression, as hundreds of thousands worked hard to defeat the Axis powers in World War II. America emerged as the superpower after the World War II, and the headquarters of the United Nations has been placed in New York City since 1951. The September 11th terrorist attacks of 2001 destroyed the World Trade Center, killing almost 3,000 people, and the The 2020 COVID-19 pandemic became the deadliest disaster by death toll in the history of New York City. With a GDP of $1.7 trillion in 2018, the state of New York is the third largest economy in the United States, behind California and Texas. And if New York State were an independent nation, it would rank as the 10th largest economy in the world. New York metropolitan area dominates the rest of the economy of the state by contributing the majority to the state's GDP, making it the country's #1 metro area as per the GDP by far. Manhattan is the leading center of banking, finance, and communication in the United States, and it's the location of the New York Stock Exchange, NYSE, on Wall Street. Many of the world's largest corporations locate their home offices in Manhattan or in nearby Westchester County. The state also has a large manufacturing sector that includes printing, publishing, garments, furs, glass, ceramics, and agricultural products. The state of New York has around 200 colleges and universities. Top-class private universities like Columbia University, Cornell University, and New York University, and the public university systems like SUNY and CUNY, yeah, that's actually how you pronounce them, are very prominent and they're world famous. Several of these universities have even been ranked among the top 100 in the US and in the world. The southern part of the state is in the Atlantic coastal plain, Long Island and New York City, and this lower Hudson River Valley. The large upstate New York region comprises several ranges of the wider Appalachian Mountains and the Adirondack Mountains. The north-south Hudson River Valley and the east-west Mohawk River Valley bisect these more mountainous regions. Western New York is considered part of the Great Lakes region and borders on Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, and Niagara Falls. The central part of the state is dominated by the Finger Lakes, a popular vacation and tourist destination. Now, coming to sports, New York hosted the Winter Olympics twice in 1932 and 1980, both at Lake Placid. New York City bid to host the 2012 Summer Olympics, but lost to London. One of the world's 4 Grand Slam tennis tournaments, the US Open Tennis Championships, is held annually at the National Tennis Center in New York City. New York has 2 Major League Baseball teams, the New York Yankees and the New York Mets. New York is home to 3 National Hockey League franchises, the New York Rangers, the New York Islanders, and the Buffalo Sabres. Now, New York also has 1 Major League Soccer team, New York City FC. However, New York is also home of 1 National Football League team, the Buffalo Bills. Yes, it's not in New York City, it's in Buffalo. The Meadowlands Stadium hosted Super Bowl XLVII in 2014, in which New York and New Jersey shared hosting duties. And the state of New York is a must visit, I have to say, in the United States, as it has many landmarks, including 4 of the world's 10 most visited tourist attractions: Times Square, Central Park, Niagara Falls, and Grand Central Terminal. So make sure to include this great state in your bucket list if you have not visited it yet. I personally have been there a few times, and man, New York is amazing. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you like my videos, then make sure to subscribe and don't forget to click the bell icon so you don't miss my new videos every time I upload. Once again, thanks so much for watching. Love you, Akash.